now talking Assault on Precinct 13. This is a 2005 remake of the John Carpenter 70s movie of the same name. It follows the basic premise of the original with a few tweaks and changes here and there, which we'll kind of touch on. Now, this is a 2005 movie, so this is going to be a spoiler review, but, you know, I'll have to discuss some of the changes, which is going to involve some spoilers there. The bare bones story is more or less the same. We have this police precinct which is being shut down. It's its last night, which happens to be on New Year's Eve. There's a heavy snowstorm, and it's kind of housed by this a few kind of skeleton staff, including Ethan Hawke's sergeant, who is a guy who is suffering from PTSD after his previous assignment. A number of his squad were killed, and he kind of feels guilt for that. Then we have like a female psychiatrist there who is treating him, the secretary, a couple of other people, including Brian Dennehy, who is kind of an aging cop. And this bus of 4 prisoners gets rerouted there because of the snowstorm, and this contains Lawrence Fishburne's character, who is a career criminal, kind of a high up in the food chain, along with a couple of other kind of criminals as well, and a couple of guards. And they end up having to stay at Precinct 13 because of the snow. However, they are besieged by forces determined to kill everyone in the building. So, like I said, the bare bones story is the same. They have tweaked some of the elements here. Now, I'd actually seen this version of the movie before the original. I'd only just watched the original, and the review up of that is on the channel. And I thought I would rewatch this one as well. Now, I actually thought having watched the original quite recently, I thought, do you know what, I actually prefer the remake from the original. I know that's very kind of controversial, because there's a whole big thing about, you know, don't do remakes, etc. But I'm not against remakes, and if a remake, I feel, improves on the material, I will acknowledge that without kind of blindly saying I don't like remakes. There are some things that I think arguably maybe work a little better to some degree in the original, which we'll discuss. But let's talk about what I liked about this movie, in particular how I think it compares to the original. One of the issues I had, well, the major issue I had with the original is that the kind of the gang members in that movie, the original, we just didn't know anything about them. And that was done by design. And I understand the reasons for it, to kind of make them this mass we don't really know anything about, because it's kind of inspired by zombies. But to me, it didn't really make logical sense, the way they were, what happened in the original movie, where they kind of shot the ice cream man and the girl. I just didn't understand why they did that. And I felt their reasons for attacking the police station were not as strong as they are in this one. So in this one of the things they have changed is we have a lot more fleshing out of the characters. So, for example, Ethan Hawke's kind of the police protagonist, we learn a lot about his backstory and how he is kind of afraid to kind of be responsible, and that is an arc within the movie which we didn't have in the kind of the original film. And then this one of the major changes here is the antagonists outside are not actually a gang. They are actually corrupt cops wanting to assassinate Lawrence Fishburne's character, because he is going to testify against them and send them all to prison. And to me, that gave it a lot more of a reason for them to have to, you know, kill him, and then ultimately, when the jig is up and the inhabitants of this police station realise that they're cops, again, it gives them more of a valid reason for wanting these guys dead. Now, I do think this lacks something, which I'll come on to in the dislike section, but I do think it makes more sense in this movie. So the other thing that this does, having it like this, is it gives our antagonists a lot more of a tactical advantage, because they have access to, you know, tactical weapons, tactical armour, things like this. A helicopter, for example. So I thought that it made more sense. And I also, in this movie, compared to the original, they seem to be a bit more strategic in the way they attack. One of the issues I didn't really talk about in my review of the original is the way the gang member just seemed to kind of like walk into gunfire and get mown down, like acting like zombies, but really without any kind of self-preservation. And it didn't make sense that a person with a brain is going to walk out in front of gunfire. There's like a mindless kind of zombie. But in this one, they're a lot more tactical in regards to how it's kind of how they assault people. I also like the fact that they have a little bit of, I mean, not much, but they have a little bit of guilt about having to try and kill these fellow police officers. I like the fact that it was at least addressed. Ultimately, it doesn't, it doesn't stop them, but they at least address it, which I thought was good. I also like that they kind of levelled up the amount of people on each side. So in the original movie, there was probably hundreds of these gang members, and we're told in this movie there's about 35 of these kind of corrupt police officers, and there's also more people within the precinct. So although they are outnumbered, they're not overwhelmingly outnumbered, which again, it gives it that slightly kind of more realistic idea that the people inside might have a better chance. And the other thing is as well, one of the things again I didn't think maybe made a lot of sense with the original is when in the original gang members got into the building, got shot and dropped their guns, but no one ever seemed to pick them up, and they ran out of ammo without having picking up guns that the antagonists dropped. In this one, they make a point of doing that. Now, I know in the original they said that they took the bodies that are outside, but the ones that are inside, they're not going to be able to get. So it did make sense to me. So I felt this movie made a lot more sense than the original, and I think it kind of fleshed it out a little bit. I also thought the performances were very good here. I thought everyone did a kind of a great job. We have a lot more of a central kind of bad guy in this movie with Gabriel Bryan as the kind of like the leader of this kind of corrupt group of policemen, and he has a couple of subordinates as well, which I thought again it just gives a little bit more character from the original movie. Now I know that was a conscious decision not to do that by John Carpenter, and if we transition to maybe what the original worked better, it made the bad guys seem like an unassuming mass, like a force that were faceless. And admittedly, that is missing from this one. Now, you can't have it both ways. Obviously, by not really giving the bad guys any motivations or any kind of speaking parts or any type of character development, the original made them this like unassuming, unstoppable mass that we really don't know much about, which made that original, I think, have a bit more of a spooky vibe, almost bearing more into a horror territory, whilst this one, because of the way it's fleshed out, is a much more of a kind of an action film. So I do admit that I do think the remake does end up lacking a little bit in that kind of the uniqueness of the original, and ends up kind of being more of a generic action film. But I still think, for me at least, I like the fact that we have more character development. I like the fact that it makes more sense to me. The only things that I would say this one does, which kind of really weren't in the original, was Brian Dennehy's kind of turn at the end, where that kind of character went. That to me seemed a little contrived. I just didn't think it kind of made a lot of sense how that was kind of set up, to be honest with you. It just seemed to come out of nowhere, and it wasn't kind of really set up. Although I did like the fact that they had a red herring in this movie, and I also like the fact that in this film, the remake, there was more of an animosity between the criminals and the police within the precincts. Even though they were kind of working together, tempers flared up a little bit more, and they kind of were at each other's throats more so than the original was. Once they teamed up, that was it. They were a kind of a team without any real kind of anything more than that. The movie as well, I think, ends on more of a satisfying note than the original. I think the original ended with the climax. It wasn't particularly exciting, and I also wanted to see what happened after it in regards to the relationship between the two main leads, because they seem to kind of go out together, and I wanted to see what happened with the kind of like the criminal in that one, because you don't really know whether his behaviour there had any effect on maybe his sentence. In this one, it ends in a different way, so I actually think it's more satisfying, to be honest with you. Overall, to be honest, if I had to say anything else, I think the changes that are made in this version do make it seem more of a generic action film, but overall I think it works, and it makes more sense, and therefore I actually prefer it because of those reasons, even though some of the mystique is missing. So I will say I'll give this a 7 out of 10. It's a thoroughly enjoyable, well-made, well-shot action movie with some great set pieces and more of a kind of a certainly more character development than the kind of the original. I still enjoyed the original, but to be honest with you, I do prefer this remake. Which one do you prefer if you've seen them both? Please let me know, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.